Well, a few other examples. If there's any snow, Christ, we get more pictures than you could ever imagine. And again, another one of the disappointments. We ask for weather pictures, we will get 20,000, we'll put up 50, and 19,950 people will think, well, why did I bother? You didn't show me, you didn't show my picture. So we've got some real issues. It's both a great advantage that we have this volume of engagement, but it's a huge issue for us in terms of what do we do with it? And if we ask for it and we don't do anything with it, we've probably lost one of our users in the process. Stories, you're going to get the picture of this anyway, but a number of stories that have been leading the news bulletins across TV and radio have been ones that have started with people sending us images of the accommodation for troops in the UK. First hint we had, not the Terminal 5 fiasco, but they had a big luggage problem last year. The first indication we had was pictures sent to us from the terminal by one of our readers. Offbeat stories, the tattooed lady who was told that she couldn't come to work unless she wore a cardigan because her tattoos were upsetting everybody else in the office. Not only was the most popular story on the news sites the following day, but she was also on breakfast TV and around the place. So it can be a whole range of things, and right up to the current day, great pictures, extraordinary first-hand accounts from the earthquake in China, and in one of the hardest places to get any reflection of what's happening from Burma, we have had a steady flow of really compelling email accounts of what's happening there, which we just couldn't hope to get in any other way. So what have we done on the back of it? We now have a hub that handles all this stuff 24 hours a day. So this isn't about the debates, this is about content that people are sending to us that's specifically about news, about things that can add value to the news stories that we're doing, but can also equally be tip-offs about stories we knew nothing of. They can be quite proactive. They can go and look for people for case studies. So quite often now, across the day's news output on breakfast or the 1 o'clock news, you'll see case studies that have begun by the hub getting after people on the website, asking for people, putting forms on the bottom of the relevant stories and asking for those accounts and drawing that back in, not just to the news site, but across the whole of the BBC News output. So this has been 3 years ago, we would never have dreamt of having this. Now there are, best part of a dozen people across the week who are dedicated 24 hours a day to looking for this content and getting it out, not just onto the news site, but across all our outlets, both locally, nationally and internationally, for the benefit of our coverage. We have special training courses for them, so everybody on this hub goes through courses on identifying hoaxes, looking where pictures have been messed about within Photoshop, what to ask people when you ring them back, all that kind of thing. It won't be foolproof. We'll fall for something one of these days, but this is as good as it can get in terms of our commitment to that quality. And whatever else we do, people will expect a certain quality about what we finally deliver to the website. So we have to build in the checks that will hopefully mean the content we put up for our audience kind of meet the standards that we would expect from other content that we put onto the site ourselves. So there's some of the things that we get from them, and clearly, as I say, we've had to invest and change the way we work in our day-to-day news operations, and there's any number of things that we can do that will help and improve our content. The other thing I wanted to talk about was blogs. Now, there's been various reports about the BBC and trust in the BBC and so on, and how we needed to be more accountable. And this was one of our first moves in that direction. It's been running for probably a year, 18 months now. It's the editor's blog on the news site, where we try to get onto the front foot and explain what we're doing. And it's proved a very valuable tool for us, because we are talking directly to the public about decisions that we've made, complaints that we're getting, explaining why we did particular things. And I think just in terms of a general perception that we're being much more open and we're not on the mountain anymore, this has been one of our key moves, just to show that we're prepared to own up. Sometimes I've written stuff on here where we basically said we got it wrong here, and this is why we got it wrong, and this is what we're going to try to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. Sometimes it can be a difficult editorial choice that we know before the complaints start that they will come, and this is a way of us getting onto the front foot and saying, well, this is why we did it. And I suspect, though you can never be completely sure, it's been the way we've drawn the sting from some of the criticism and the stories that might run in the national papers about things we do. I suspect that on occasions, by getting on here and being completely open about why we did a particular thing, kind of deflates the story, which I suppose it's a good thing from a selfish point of view, but most importantly, this should be a very clear, regularly updated place where people feel we aren't quite the old BBC where we just kind of unleash our content onto the public and they just have to accept it. This is a very clear two-way approach that we have for listening to the audience and responding to their concerns. And once we're doing that, of course, and this is the bleeding obvious stuff for lots of you, once we do that, other things around that page tie us in more to the web as a whole. So once we've got that post up and running, we can link to other discussions we've had on there before, but we can also link out to other blogs where people are talking about the things that we're doing. So again, bit of a clue about the debating stuff. We don't have to host all the debates on the BBC website. We can just as easily say, this is our perspective, here's some of the comments you've given us, but actually, hey, look out here. On the web as a whole, there are people with a whole range of views about what we're doing. Some of them are giving us a real kicking, some are very supportive. Why don't you go and have a look at some of those? And if you want to join the debate elsewhere on the web, go ahead. Doesn't have to be on the news site. Big change in mindset for us, and there'll be a few examples coming up where that idea that you must come to the news website to see what's going on and discuss it, well, not really. We need to be a bit more open about the way we point people to other places where they can get other perspectives, read other debates and engage where they wish. So I think that's been a real success for us, and we've extended it into correspondence now, and without the saying like some, we've got everything right, it's fantastic. We've fallen into some of the traps that I heard mentioned a bit earlier on. There was blogging fever at the BBC for a time. Suddenly it was the thing that everybody wanted to do, everybody needed to have a blog, it was going to be fantastic. As a result, I think we launched some real howlers. They didn't really do anything. They had nothing of value to say. They certainly weren't particularly interested in what the audience said back to them. They were really dysfunctional. So, my approach on the news site when I was running it was that we would just do a small number, and they had to be with people who completely got the approach and were committed to doing these properly. And if they're not worth having. So, you need somebody. The best examples and the most sort of long-running are Robert Peston and Nick Robinson, who will update their blogs on a, several times a day basis. Nick Robinson has literally sent an update to his blog on his BlackBerry from the Rose Garden at the White House to say, hey everybody, I've just asked Bush a great question. You should watch it in video as soon as you can, but this is what happened. And he's updating it while the press conference is still going on. Robert Peston, a very well-established newspaper journalist before he came to the BBC, does this fantastically well in terms of real insight and being able to give more detail beyond the stories that he can do in 2 minutes on the 10 o'clock news or whatever other outlet. This is a real focus for Robert. He doesn't particularly want to do lots of other reporting on the news site. When he came, he was very keen to do this, and he was very clear that once it was up and running, it would have real focus from him, and it does. And I think it's now a very well respected part of the business reporting in the UK. Well over 1 million people a month now engage with his blog, and they use them intelligently. They will respond to some of the things that the audience say to them. Nick Robinson will say, I'm going to the Prime Minister's monthly questions today. What kind of questions should I ask him? And we get many suggestions, probably one's suitable to ask. And it just feels a little bit more like we're being open. We're discussing some of the things we're hearing in Westminster that won't necessarily make a story on one of the outlets or even a story on the news site, but he can just start to float things that he's hearing.